The flashing neon lights of the casino beckoned from a distance, casting a cold, almost alien glow on the empty street. Inside, the sound of clinking coins, rolling dice, and the hum of slot machines filled the air, a symphony of chance and fortune. It was a place where everything could change in the blink of an eye, if you had the courage to take the gamble. Jake, his eyes filled with both fear and hope, stepped inside, his loyal German shepherd, Max, by his side. Max wasn't just a pet. He was Jake's best friend, his confidant, and his protector. But tonight, Max had become something more, a symbol of the one thing Jake had left: faith. Faith in a gamble so risky, so uncertain, that it could either turn their lives around or destroy everything they had. The air felt thicker than usual. Jake's heart beat erratically as he looked at Max. The dog stood beside him, head high, eyes scanning the room with calm, practiced indifference. Max could always sense when things were off, when something dangerous was in the air. Tonight, Jake wasn't sure if it was the weight of the decision or the uncertainty of what lay ahead. But Max's sharp gaze was unwavering, steady as always. Jake reached into his pocket, pulling out the crumpled, worn ticket that had started it all. The high-stakes poker game was their last shot at changing everything. A new life, a better future. No more bills, no more struggling to make ends meet. This one opportunity could solve everything. "Are you sure about this, Max?" Jake muttered under his breath. He wasn't really asking the dog, but it helped to speak the words aloud, as if confirming his resolve. Max gave him a soft nudge with his nose, a comforting gesture that seemed to say, "We've got this, Jake." Jake took a deep breath and stepped forward. This was it. The moment that would define everything. It hadn't always been like this. Jake had worked hard for years, but the world had a way of knocking him down when he least expected it. A failed business, mounting debt, and a broken relationship with his family had left him with nothing. Except for Max. Max was the one constant in his life, the one thing he could count on no matter what. But it was hard, so hard, to keep pushing forward when it felt like every door was closed. That was when he heard about the poker game. The invite had come from an old acquaintance, a man named Daniel, who had been a high roller in the underground gambling world for years. It was a private, high-stakes game, one with enough money at stake to change the lives of those involved. At first, Jake hesitated. He knew the risks, knew how these kinds of games worked. But Max had been with him through everything, and Jake couldn't let him down now. Not when they were so close to having a shot at everything they'd ever dreamed of. So he made the call, and now here they were, standing at the threshold of a life-altering gamble. Inside the casino, the atmosphere was thick with tension. People moved with purpose, their eyes focused on their next move, their next chance. The stakes were high, and the room seemed to pulse with the electric thrill of the game. Jake felt the weight of it all pressing down on him. "Jake!" a voice called out. It was Daniel leaning against a table, a smug smile playing on his lips. "Glad you could make it. You know the rules. One hand. Winner takes all." Jake nodded, trying to steady his breathing. "I'm ready," he said, though he wasn't sure if he believed it himself. Max, sensing the shift in Jake's energy, moved closer, sitting down by his side. His eyes never left Daniel, who raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Max's presence was reassuring. The dog was calm, unflinching in the face of the tension building around them. He had always been Jake's anchor, and tonight, that felt more important than ever. The game began, and as the cards were dealt, Jake's mind swirled with anxiety. He had to win. There was no other option. This was the only way to secure a future for him and Max, a way out of the mess he'd created. He couldn't lose. Not now, but the game was as unpredictable as life itself. Each hand was more nerve-wracking than the last, and Jake felt the pressure mounting. Max stayed silent, his eyes locked on the table, his presence steady as a rock. Jake's hands were clammy, his nerves rattling, but he pressed on. The stakes were too high for him to back out now. With each round, the game became more intense. Jake's heart raced as the chips stacked higher, the pot growing with every move. His opponents were skilled, experienced, and as the tension built, Jake couldn't help but feel like the odds were slipping away from him. His hands trembled, but Max remained calm. The dog never wavered, never showed any signs of doubt. It was as if Max knew deep down that Jake had come too far to give up now. Then came the final hand. Everything Jake had worked for, everything he had hoped for, came down to this moment. The dealer's face was unreadable as he dealt the final cards. Jake studied his hand, his pulse racing in his ears. A pair of tens, not bad. Not great either. But he had to believe in the gamble. He had to push all in. The chips in front of him were enough to change his life, to change Max's life. Jake glanced at his dog, who seemed to sense the tension in the air. Max sat quietly beside him, his tail still, his gaze unwavering. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Daniel's voice broke through the silence. He leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with amusement. "Once you commit, there's no turning back." Jake's throat tightened. No turning back. That was the thing about high-stakes gambles. Once you made the bet, it was all or nothing. "I'm all in," Jake said, his voice barely above a whisper. Max's ears perked up as if understanding the magnitude of the decision. It was a quiet moment, a brief exchange between man and dog, but it was enough. Jake trusted Max more than anyone in the world, and tonight he knew the dog was with him. They had come this far together. There was no going back. The final cards were revealed, and for a moment time seemed to stop. Jake's breath caught in his throat. The room went eerily silent as the dealer turned over the last card. His eyes locked with Jake's, and a slow smile spread across his face. "You did it," Daniel muttered, disbelief in his voice. Jake's hand had won. Against all odds, he had pulled off the unimaginable. The room erupted into cheers, but all Jake could hear was the pounding of his heart and Max's soft breathing beside him. For the first time in a long time, Jake felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope. The weight of the world seemed to lift off his shoulders as the realization hit him. He had won. Not just the money, but the chance to build a future, to give Max the life he deserved. Max stood beside him, his tail wagging slowly, as if to say, "We did it, Jake." But with victory came the realization that life's gambles didn't always have clear endings. For Jake and Max, this win didn't just change their lives, it taught them that the greatest bet of all was the one they made on each other. They didn't need the money to survive, they needed each other. And together, they had faced the highest stakes of all. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.